Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz guitarist Chico Pinheiro. We caught up with him on June 23rd, 2020 during the COVID-19 lockdown to talk about his latest 2020 CD, City of Dreams. He was born and raised in São Paulo, Brazil, and started playing the guitar when he was 6. At 14, he started working as a studio session guitarist, and he soon began to be called to collaborate with a wide range of artists in his hometown, then in Brazil, then abroad. Get to know him and dig this interview.
It's so hot here, man. In New York, it's kind of, 90s or something, it's hot.
Yeah, it's kind of, Kansas City tends to resemble what you guys go through. It's like all of a sudden it's just hot, like every day's 90.
Right, yeah, it's amazing. That's the thing about U.S. I'm from Brazil, obviously, so we don't have this kind of weather. Obviously, the winter, it's not even close to what we have here in New York. But summer here is super hot and humid, so it makes it worse. It's very humid.
How you hold up there with COVID-19 and the way the world is now?
I'm feeling optimistic about the outcome. I think now we're gonna face some really kind of challenging times as we are doing right now. But I think at the end, I just hope that we become better beings, a better people, because right now it's not just the COVID-19, that it's weird. We're facing some, in Brazil it's the same here in Brazil everywhere. So I just hope that we, the outcome is but it's kind of hard, of course, I got all my gigs till the end of the year, they've been all canceled, man. All canceled. 3 major tours to Europe, tours to South America, and a lot of dates here in US. They're all gone. And I think everyone is facing the same situation. As freelancers, we're. It's going to be a tough year for sure. I'm glad that I'm teaching at the new school. So I have my students and I'm teaching online, which helps a lot. That helps a lot. To have a steady gig but other than that, man, I know a bunch of friends that they are just struggling to pay the rent, which is so sad. And everything is what's happening right now. With the Floyd thing. Everything. It's just. It's an interesting time to live in, to say the least,
Yeah, everything's boiling over for sure. Well, and you got an album, City of Dreams, that's coming out during a pandemic and a very interesting time. Talk to me a little bit about, people might have more time to listen to it, but you can't tour with it live. Talk to me about your feelings on it.
I'm really proud of this one. It's a different album. I would say it's a very different album from all my previous albums. I think this one is more, I would say, it shows me, it showed me more as a guitar player. The other ones were basically songs, and I love songs. Songs are my favorite art form when it comes to music. I just love songs. The lyrics, I'm very attached to lyrics, and I love to write songs. So I would say that I'm a songwriter that happens to play the guitar, and that's it. So I think this one it's 100% instrumental, and I love the musicians that I'm featuring on the album. Chris Potter, and all the guys from Brazil, Thiago Costa, Edu Ribeiro, my drummer for many years, and Bruno Migoto, which is a fantastic, wonderful young bass player. So I think it came out really nicely, I'm really happy with this one, and I'm just I don't know what to expect, in the odd times we're living in, but I think it's gonna be. I'm getting already, a really great feedback from people here and in Brazil. So I think it's gonna be good. It's gonna be nice.
Well, speaking of Brazil, talk to me a little bit about growing up. And by the time you were 14, you were a session musician. Talk to me a little bit about how jazz became your life.
So I started playing the guitar as a self-taught musician. I never had until, I would say, to my teenager years. When I was 6, I started playing the guitar. And I started, as you said, I started working professionally very early. When I was 13, I got my first paid, record session. And it was really from that on, I've been playing most of my life. I attended physics school in Brazil for 2 years. But jazz came to my life later on. My first records that I heard was through my mom, that loved jazz, obviously. Besides Brazilian music, I grew up listening to Brazilian music. Any Brazilian musician, we have such a strong culture, a music culture. So everyone has a guitar at home or a piano. And my mom used to have a lot of jam sessions at home. And I would be listening to music 24/7, basically. And jazz became a passion when I was about 12 or 13, and I started listening to Wes Montgomery, Pat Metheny, Weather Report. That was kind of my window to jazz. These guys, I love Miles Davis. I would listen to kind of blue, and I would love just the sound of it. And I would listen a lot to João Gilberto, which I think is there's a similarity, between João and obviously Chet Baker and Miles, the way they approach music with such delicacy, and I always loved that. The way João approached, his singing, his way of singing, and I just loved it. So that's how I started to become more interested in jazz, and obviously Guess Gilberto album, and then the Jobim with Sinatra album. Those albums were, and later on Jobim's Urubu and Matita Perê. Both albums were still one of my favorites. The both are on my top list. Both of these albums. So I think it's something that it was natural for me somehow.
Did you always have a dream of coming to America? Was that always kind of on your radar?
I started, not always, but I started to think about coming to America when I was 17. And then, because what I think, Joe, is that if you want to learn any kind of music, it can be Cuban music, it can be jazz, American jazz, because jazz is so, the range is really, really wide. But when it comes to jazz, American jazz, more straight ahead jazz, you have to come here. Otherwise, I always make this joke with my students that, okay, if you want to learn, Russian, you gotta, it's one thing is to learn from the books, to speak a language, and another thing is to starve, and when you have to eat, when you have to express yourself, in that language, it's a different thing, from learning from the books, at home, sitting comfortably in your sofa, so I decided to come here to really dig deeper into jazz, to really learn the language. And that helped me a lot because I got to play with really wonderful, great musicians and that was a lesson itself. I think that the best lesson you can have when it comes to jazz, the best thing you can do is to play with better players than yourself, to learn from them. Jazz is not something that you learn from the books, at least in my perspective. I'm not, saying that it might work for somebody else, but not for me. I learned way more when I started playing with people, in real situations, and that was, and got my butt kicked, so that was the biggest lesson that I could have, so that's why I moved to US, and I was passionate, for jazz, and that was a good thing, I think, and then I came to Berkeley at first, the first thing I did was the first thing I started doing at Berkeley was playing jam sessions, every night. As I told you, I was playing a lot with all kinds of musicians from all over, and that was great. That was the best thing, for me, as far as going to Berkeley.
Well, and speaking of learning from other musicians, what have you learned that's really stuck with you that you were looking for, that's really resonated with you as a performer?
That's a very interesting question. I think the most valuable lesson that I learned from them was you really gotta listen. Way more important than your fingers or your whatever. Like it's your ears. That's what define you. Because you have to listen what's going on. You have to listen what is surrounding you. As a musician. And then and another lesson that I think it was very valuable for me was less is more. We always think that it's so weird when you listen to people playing, you always think it's more complex than it really is. I mean, when it comes to Brazilian music, it's the same. When I see people, like foreign people playing Brazilian music, they play way more than they should play. I think so. When you become more familiar with the music and you more, whatever, like a more experienced, more seasoned, you start to you don't want to show or you don't think that you have to prove anything to anyone. So I think that's great. That's the best thing you can have with you, as a musician. So just do what the music calls for, and that's the lesson that I learned from them, from these great people, that I've been playing with. When as a youngster, I was like, oh no, I gotta play everything I know. When you're a student, you do that. That's part of the process, right? It's part of your process as a learner. But I think right now, I just want to play, what the music calls for, and that I learned not from books, obviously, but playing with people and watching and listening the way they react to the music that is presenting at the moment. So that was a really, 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 and maybe the most valuable lesson that I learned from them.
Why do you love jazz?
Wow, Joe. I don't know if my English is good enough to answer this question. I don't know. I don't know how to put it into words. It's just, I think the freedom. The freedom of expression. And I always tell people that you learn all these rules that they teach you at school, right? At these schools, and then on the first Herbie Hancock solo, you listen to him like breaking all these rules. I love that, all the rules. So you analyze the solo, you say, oh my God, man, but he's using this and that. So that's what I love about jazz, about you breaking the rules all the time. All the great players, they are always breaking the rules, all the rules. So I mean, that's one thing that I learned and I love about jazz. Anything goes. Really, anything goes. If it sounds good to you, it's good, man. It doesn't matter. It's. I think it's in Brazil we have. I grew up listening because obviously jazz is an American art form. But I mean, in Brazil we have some similar, environments, musical environments that allow you to be, free. And jazz is on top of all these genres, it's where you can express yourself in the most, with more integrity. That's what I love, and I love the music. I mean, I love harmonies. I love harmonies. I love harmony. Really, I'm completely passionate about harmony. So I think it was totally natural. It was something that since I couldn't explain anything technically, even if I couldn't. I would still love jazz. If I was a physician or whatever, I would still love jazz.
What do you like the best about being a performer? Yeah, the best thing about it.
I think the best thing is to interact to other musicians. To make it, as to make this happen, to make the music happen, in a collective way. That's what I like the most, really. I love to play solo, but I always prefer to play with people. That's what I have fun all the time. So I really like to interact with other musicians and like see, and make a conversation, like, and try to help ourselves, try to support ourselves, like sometimes, it's very, you surprise yourself, the way, especially like very generous musicians, the way they support you, So there's going to be always a safety net, even though, like, as Wayne Shorter used to say, like, and Wayne Shorter says, like, it's, playing jazz is like jumping in the dark, like taking a leap in the dark without a safety net. I agree with that, but I mean, there is always a safety net. When you're playing collectively, there is always somebody. Okay, I got it. I know what you're trying to do, or I know what you're going for, and they're gonna, like, kind of support, and you're going to create something really great together. That's what I think is the best thing to play, to perform, to be a performer. I would say that.
Yeah. So when we do get back to live music, when COVID-19 calms down, we get a vaccine, however that transpires, what do you hope the fans and musicians realize about this time away from live music?
I think not just musicians, but I think, Joe, if it's there anything positive about COVID-19 is that there is a lot of things very ordinary that we think it's ordinary that we take for granted, as having a beer, with friends. You know what I'm saying? I mean, never think how important it is, like how important it is to play, to share a stage, to share music with your friends, like around the world. We just take it for granted. So I think, I can't wait. I really can't wait to make music and to have beers with friends, to hang out, like simple things in life that we never think, that they are so important. We just take it for granted. So I think the COVID-19, it's making the musicians realize that, we are very fragile, as artists, and that's true. Talking about not just in terms of industry or whatever, but I mean, like, we do what we do for a living, like we just play music and we don't think about it. How fragile it is, like a simple virus can just put a pause in the world, like stop the world. And not just musicians, but I mean, I'm talking about musicians. So I think everyone is feeling, like it's having this feeling of fragility, like how fragile we are. And then, like these little things that I just doing a jam session, playing a jam session on a random basement in Brooklyn, these things are so important, so vital. So I think we are realizing that, that we are nothing, not nothing in the sense that we're just like a grain of sand, in the middle of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like vague, it's kind of, but I mean, I realize that at least, like we are blessed to do what we love, and we don't realize it. We are blessed to do what we love in a daily basis. We just kind of, I think, just a very, very small percentage of people do that in the world. So I think we are realizing that how we love music. I'm realizing that. And I feel like I truly miss playing with people. I really trust. I'm not doing this kind of live things with, that when people like record at home, not live, but record at home and then put together. Man, I'm trying to avoid that for now. Like people are always asking me, like, Chico, let's play a duo or whatever. I send you a track, but I don't think it's the same. Like it's so different. Maybe I might be doing that in the future. I don't know. And maybe you're gonna be like in quarantine for months, for years. I don't know. No, I can't say. But I mean, for now, I prefer to just, like be quiet and thinking about things. Like just like realizing how important and some things are, and we never realized. I think that's it.
one final question. Everyone has their perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're the one that's living your life. Who do you think you are?
Wow, Joe. I don't know. I'm I'm still figuring out. I think the thing that everyone says about me that I kind of agree. Like I have sense of humor. I'm an optimistic guy, and I want to keep like that. Like I don't want. I always been very optimistic about life. That for me, and I think, because everyone says, I'm a musician or I'm a whatever architect. I don't think music defines me, but I can't see myself without music. You know what I'm saying? I think like such an important part of my life, and such an important part of me, So I think I'm this guy, like just a regular guy, trying to live my life the best way I can, and being whatever like meaningful to people that I love, like to mean something, like to people that. So I'm always there. Like people define me when they say like, oh, so you have sense of me, and I have good ears. So if I wasn't a musician, I would be a therapist for sure, because I have so many secrets, man. I have so many secrets that I keep to myself. Like I have I'm proud of having a lot, like many friends, and I love them all. And I just think that that's what it matters. Like the relationships, the love that we spread. That I don't want to sound like preaching or anything like that, but really that's meaningful to me. Like the relationships that I built through the years, and especially with my colleagues. Like from years and years, sometimes decades, and that's for me it's the best thing. Like so I think I'm a friend, of my friends, and I'm an optimistic guy that happens to love to make music. So I hope my music look like shows this, like that I'm optimistic, like and see life try to see life in the brightest way possible. That's who I am, I think.
Right on. That's a great answer, man. Hey, Chico, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me, and thank you for your generosity.
Yeah. Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview. We give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Brazil, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Chico for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.